お前ら
かかってこい。
何行くぞ。さあ、これで文句はないな。
So, here we are, at last. I have played the entirety of Yakuza 5 in English. When I started playing the series with the first game, 1 to 4 and Dead Souls were already out, so I could play them all in order. Then, as I finished Dead Souls, I knew Yakuza 5 was out in Japan, but there was no word on the Western release. Time went on and on and on, and I became more and more anxious that it would never come out at all. The series has never sold that well outside of Japan, and while it would be understandable if Sega might give up on it altogether, at the same time it would be totally unacceptable. But, due to the fans not giving up, and Sony's third-party localization program, Yakuza 5 was finally announced on December 8, 2014.
Yakuza 5.
And released another year after that, on December 12th. Yakuza 5 was the most ambitious and huge undertaking from Sega at the time, with 5 playable characters, 5 cities to visit, and a deep intertwining story about fulfilling dreams. So, after finally playing it, how do I feel about it? Actually, sort of disappointed. Not of the gameplay, there's not much to complain about in that department, but I was disappointed by the storyline. There's too many complaints that I could make that would bring spoilers, so I'm not going to, but in general I thought the story was a bit too complicated for its own good, with constant who's behind it all moments, characters that just dropped off the map, and an ending that walked a thin line between admitted awesomeness and absolute corniness. The story, such as it is, taking place 2 years after Yakuza 4, is split among the 5 main characters, starting with Kiryu. His chapter is pretty downbeat and depressing. He's now living in Fukuoka after being more or less forced out of running the orphanage in Okinawa. He works as a taxi driver under a fake name, which in a nice touch is the same fake name that Saejima used in Yakuza 4 for a short time. The Tojo clan is preparing for a possible war with the Omi alliance, and Daigo comes to town for negotiations, at which point he runs into Kiryu, then goes missing. Kiryu, yet again, but very unwillingly this time, gets pulled into the search for Daigo and all the different plots. Saejima meanwhile chose to serve out his final couple years in jail, which he does in Hokkaido instead of Okinawa. Bummer. After making friends and enemies in the prison, he busts out, fights a bear with his bare hands, and sets out on the streets of Sapporo to find out why Majima got assassinated. Yes, he does believe Majima is dead, but any fan of the series would know from the start that they wouldn't kill off one of their most marketable characters. Anyway, Saejima's buddy from prison, Baba, turns out is evil, but then turns back to good again because Saejima is just too wonderful, or something. Baba is a very confused man. After Saejima's chapter, we head to Osaka and Haruka's first playable offering. Now unfortunately Haruka never decided to train martial arts, so instead Yakuza 5 has her trying to become an idol through singing and dancing, resulting in many a rhythm music minigame. Haruka was scouted out of Okinawa by Mireille Park, a ruthless talent coach who pretty much blackmails Haruka to keep chasing her dream of becoming an idol, which is really Park's dream, as she tried to become an idol when she was young but failed. Haruka fails to realize the blackmail part though, and sees Park as a mother figure, which of course she never really had before. Unfortunately, I guess, Park gets killed by someone, and Haruka gets to experience that the shady backstage world of show business is dangerous indeed. Staying in Osaka, Akiyama is trying to start an affiliate office of Sky Finance there, runs into Haruka and becomes involved too. In case Akiyama was your favorite character in Yakuza 4, my apologies, his appearance here is cut down significantly, although he still has plenty of fights to partake in. Finally, in Nagoya, Tatsuo Shinada, a character only very tangentially related to anything, is introduced. He used to be a baseball star, but was accused of cheating and had to quit the sport, disgraced. He also happened to go to the same school as Daigo, and meets the disguised man in Nagoya, urging him to find out the truth behind his scandal all those years ago. Shinada is also flat broke all the time and has a loan shark on his ass, which leads to some funny moments.
てめえら生命保険もかけてねえ人間勝手に殺すんじゃねえよ
At the ends of everyone's chapters, they all head to Kamurocho for one more chapter before it all comes together. Kiryu and Saejima is led there by a certain detective. Somehow this made me think of him as the game's equivalent of Nick Fury from the Avengers. I also call him Dark Date just because he's a police officer, but he's a bit shady. The story to this game is not bad, don't get me wrong, but it felt too unfocused, too needlessly complex, and along the ride, every time you think you're going to get some clarity, it leads to more questions. And the main question in this game is always, who's behind it all? And it becomes tiring. When we do find out who is behind it all, it's actually a pretty cool revelation. But then the actual final boss fight after that seemed very pulled out of nowhere. To me personally though, what I cared most about throughout this game was to get to see Kiryu and Haruka reunite. And do they? Alright, let's leave this negativity behind and move on to the gameplay. The main new thing about the fighting is that besides the new fighting style of Shinada, the rage meter or whatever it's called, symbolized by the dragon kanji up in the top left, this fills up similarly to heat and can then be used in various ways. Kiryu can enter a rage mode where he's invincible for a while, Saejima can pick up people and throw them around like dish rags, Akiyama can kick people up in the air and juggle them for a while, and Shinada can push people into walls or other people. This meter also gives each character a special attack. Kiryu can use the essence of the dragon kick or whatever it's called. Saejima can punch the ground. Akiyama does a combo similar to Kiryu's. Shinada drags people around like one of those Chinese taxi things, face first along the ground. Ouch! Shinada's fighting style in general felt pretty unremarkable, especially compared to the evades and arm locks of Yakuza 4's Tanimura, but it was at least fun to have an unbreakable weapon with Shinada. Speaking of weapons, now you can level up your proficiency in different categories of weapons by using them, which will enable you to use better ones and have the repair kit, another great addition, work better. Weapon modding is easier to do now. It's no longer a scavenger hunt for all sorts of different items. Instead you pay money to increase the mod shop's capabilities, as well as donate a few items to them to make some weapons possible. Now in battles you can press R2 with some weapons you pick up to actually transfer them to your inventory. This is something that I missed in Yakuza 3, I remember, because in Yakuza 2 you could pick up weapons off the street and then put them into your inventory. So I guess it's back here and I like it. One more thing when it comes to weapons. In Yakuza 3 and 4 you could press circle to do a special weapon attack, and it always cost 10 uses of said weapon. Here they changed it so it only takes exactly how many hits that actually land, which is much more fair. Every character except for Akiyama now have a side business to attend to. These actually go beyond minigames and have quite a bit of depth and story to them, allowing for many game hours to be spent. Kiryu drives a taxi, which results in actual driving, safe driving at that, street racing, and missions where the objective is to talk to the customer. Saejima goes hunting, to save a small snowy town from that huge man-eating bear. It's not for me personally, but it's certainly deep enough. Haruka works as an idol, so with her you get to do a variety of different tasks, dancing, appearing on TV shows, and this really odd and pointless running girl show. Shinada plays baseball at the batting center, which is just as fun as the batting cage in any other of the games, which is to say, not very. To me anyway. My favorite sub-story this time was when Shinada went to a job interview, but it turned out the employer did it as a cover for finding a gay lover. Perfect! Cue another diaper fight. Yakuza 5 also marks the first console Yakuza game to actually mark out the sub-stories with a question mark symbol on the map, something they took from the second PSP game. It was just a shame that very few of the side quests were located in Kamurocho. Speaking of Kamurocho, it looks pretty much the same as always, only that the gelateria has been switched with a restaurant, which is also there in Yakuza 0, so I guess it made a comeback. Sotenbori Osaka felt great to see again, and of the two new cities, Nagoya and Sapporo, I think I liked Sapporo more, if only for its giant snow sculptures and overall Christmassy feeling. Nagoya did have a pretty cool park though. Hostess clubs are a series mainstay, and they've been improved here to where you can now finally affect the course of the date instead of just answering questions. Not to mention they're fully voiced now. Revelations was a fun way to learn techniques in past games, but here they seem to have been scaled back quite a bit, down to only one per character. The upgrade system is like a mix of Yakuza 1 through 3 and 4. I think it's a step back personally, because again you're a bit more limited as opposed to 4 where you could choose more freely. Chase battles took a step back too in my opinion. You have more control over the running now, but almost too much. It feels a bit fidgety. And the music here again is nowhere near as good as the first chase theme of Yakuza 3. Random encounters are kind of more annoying now, in a way. Although it's easier to tell them apart now, with a red ... box over their head, there are so many of them. You can avoid them by walking slow, but that's no fun. So it's like you're always being chased. And a common group of enemies are hosts. Since when did hosts get so violent? Adding to the randomness of encounters, sometimes when you bump into people they get angry and fight you. And now enemies can run away from battles, or call for backup. The new item Appstim RX makes completing the eating challenge much easier, finally. And by recommending food to the Jet Li looking chef Tatsuya, he teaches you how to eat your way to 2 health bars. There are several new minigames, a photo booth, Taiko no Tatsujin or Virtua Fighter 2, chicken racing, snowball fighting, comedy team, and ramen chef. Instead of Boxelios 1 and 2, there's Gun Rain, another trippy shooter with shiny graphics. Real style golf has been changed back to a driving range a la Yakuza 1 and 2. The old minigames all persist, except for ping pong, which was changed into air hockey. And the Inner Fighter, now IF8, is now a side-scrolling beat-em-up. Interesting. So, to sum this all up, after all is said and done, I do feel a bit disappointed in Yakuza 5. The storyline at least. Without even having understood what they said, I can confidently say that Yakuza 0 was better, which actually I think Yakuza 5 suffered from. Being that I had to wait 3 years for Yakuza 5, and in the meantime I played Kenzan Ishin, the PSP games, and 0, I might have had a different reaction if I played 5 right after Dead Souls. Another factor that may have affected me was the year-long wait from the 2014 announcement to the actual release. At the announcement I was at the apex of hype, but a full year later, and with very little info from Sega along the way I might add, I felt more resigned and I had more of a let's get this over with feeling. Although that doesn't change the fact that I still have a lot of complaints about the overly complicated and messy storyline. Hey, the truth is, I expected a 10 out of 10 game and got a 9 out of 10 game. I'm still very happy that I got to play this great, ambitious and very dense game. The Japanese title of Yakuza 5 is Fulfiller of Dreams. Ever getting to play this game in English for 3 full years was just a dream to me. And thanks to the fans and Sony, that dream was finally fulfilled.